Okay, by the official clock, it is now 9 o'clock, so we will start with, I believe, the final session for budget presentations for the 2019-2020 biennial budget. And just a note, as with Councilmember Holman, the two budget sessions that he missed and Councilmember Pelosa is missing this one, the directors that presented on those days will present directly with the council member if they ask for that. So, all right. And so I will turn it over to Shelley.
Well, good morning. I was going to say good evening. Normally we meet in the evening, typically.
Okay. Oh, Shelley. Yeah. Sorry, I need to ask for roll call first.
Oh, sorry. Councilmember Baggett.
Here.
Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember DeCoursey.
Here.
Councilmember Holman.
Here.
Councilmember Pelosa.
Excused.
Councilmember Trott-Manuel.
Here.
Councilmember Wells.
Here.
Okay. With that, we have 5 hours scheduled for today, but we'll go as long as we go, and I don't know if we'll need 5 hours, but I don't want to say we won't, just in case. But we're going to start with police, and they have a couple of departments, SCORE and the police department, as well as Fund 117, which is our drug investigation.
All right. So I thought we would start out on page 149 of the smaller binder. And that is the chart that shows positions. You have 140 FTEs now in the police department. All right, and then I'm going to have you hop over in that same book to page 159. Performance measures. These are traditionally things that we've continued every budget cycle, and that's crimes per thousand, priority one response times, and domestic violence incidents. And we make an educated guess, obviously, for the 2019 and 2020 and kind of where we think we might be. The priority one response time, just so you know, has always kind of been our earmark for that is a priority one. That's something has happened. It's typically a felonious crime, and we need to put down everything we're doing and get ourselves there. So those take a lot of priority. Page 155, talking about goals. You'll get a chance to read through those. We're going to continue most of the goals from the last biennium on. On page 158, we've added a couple more. During this biennium, we will be seeking our reaccreditation from the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs. And so we will begin working on that in 2019 for a 2020 completion date. So there are 150 standards there dedicated by the association, and we have a commander and one police officer that manages those files. So we will begin to, and since the last time we got accredited, we'll have to actually show proofs that we are in compliance for 3 years in a row. So it can be a pretty laborious process if any of you aren't familiar with it. So, and then I think you've seen in this budget we have requested some dollars in order to do some assessments on needs as far as facilities. And I know that many of us, to include me, would want to be intimately involved in that process if possible. So I think most of you have been at the police department and kind of seen what we're up against. So we've now moved half of all of our command staff is out of our locker room now, and most of our detectives are now, and half of the sergeants are. So that is to make room for the officers that are coming in, so we can have some room in there. So I don't want to get back to 1990 when we actually used to have to get dressed in shifts because the locker room was so tight. So anyway, all right. So let's go to the next tab, which is going to back up. We're going to go to SCORE. And you're going to notice on when it comes to SCORE, as far as the goals and the accomplishments towards the 17-18 goals, those were all provided to me by SCORE themselves. I did not evaluate those. I asked the director at the time to send me those. And some of the new goals that they're going to be trying to accomplish this year are kind of at the lower right-hand side of page 151. So budget-wise, you're going to notice there's a significant increase from 2017-18 biennium through this biennium. Most of this is due to the average daily population beginning to start to creep again. But that's also dependent upon other agencies and their usage too. And so it all plays into it. So you're noticing over the 2-year biennium is we got some significant increases projected for SCORE. Any questions about that? Okay. So let's move back to, let me get to 160. I'm trying to find the dollar copy. If you get into, if you go to page 160 and then turn the page on the right-hand side, you'll see line item 142, which is where we keep the budget reference SCORE. And you're going to notice that over the biennium here through 19, you're going to see a 7% increase from 2018, and then you're going to see another 3% increase from 2019. Most of this is due to just the service that Valleycom requests that we pay. The 800 megahertz radios, that means the cost of every radio we have in a car and on a hip is beginning to increase. And then the cellular service covers all the police there as well. So you're seeing a significant increase in Valleycom. So, just kind of recap between SCORE and Valleycom, there's a lot of costs there that we don't control. And so those are things we have to absorb because we definitely have to have those two areas. So, okay. What we could do is, if here are the line items for every division. There's roughly 3 or 4 divisions here within the police department. Don't know if you get a chance to see through those. Roughly everything is kind of the same. Kind of in our administrative section, on section 521-100, there are some increases. Most of that is due to some of the administrative items that we purchase have gone up, such as Crime Stoppers, Police One, and some of our training areas. Those have increased.
Councilmember Trout Manuel.
On 163, where you read the police one, there's Alive and Free. What's that?
Alive and Free is a group that we assist funding in order to do drug and gang interventions. And so they really do great work. It's actually, the program is actually co-sponsored by the Seattle Seahawks.
Oh, okay.
And so it's when we do begin to have an issue here or one that's arising, Alive and Free is a great resource for us to get a real clear picture, boots on the ground, what's occurring or what has occurring, and assists us with enforcement, but really it helps us with prevention too.
Thank you.
Councilmember DeCoursey.
Bill, we see on 2020, that line item is not there, so what happens in 2020? Does that program go away?
Well, what we did is in 18, we actually had budgeted 60,000, and then we did not carry 60,000. We merely carried 30,000. So we think for those dollars we can get what we need out of the group. I should say that there are other law enforcement agencies that are considering during their budget process if they are going to want to continue to be involved in the program. So I still think the program's important. I know the mayor thinks the program's important, and so we see a benefit out of it. So we're gonna stick with it. But I don't want Auburn to be the sole funder of that group either. So that's where we're at.
Councilmember Wells.
No, as we've increased from 118 police FTEs to 140.
That's 140 is all employees.
Okay, what was
commissioned is still 118.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. What I was thinking for us is, we're going to have some other meetings where we talk about how to raise revenues and stuff. And I really think that this community loves its police department. You saw that up at Lakeland when they put all those blue ribbons around, and the gifts that safety is one of our paramount responsibilities, and it might be what we want to talk about is the additional radios and some of the other things that we need to do to ensure, might be the grounds for us looking for another funding source through a safety bond, and it could even be tied into streets. So I think that this is something that really appeals to our community for positive reasons, as opposed to some of these other major metropolitans that are having problems with enforcement and whatever. We just have a glow on us and an opportunity to maybe ask for some more money, especially when it comes also to the facility.
Okay. Any other questions on the general fund line items at all? All right, so let's go back to the big binder then. And to page 430. This fund, again, is dependent quite a bit on drug seizures that are not only done by our local detectives here in the city, but two detectives that are assigned to task force, one being the Valley Narcotics Enforcement Team, which is housed out of the Port of Seattle, and then the other one is the Tahoma Narcotics Enforcement Team, which is housed at the DEA office in downtown Tacoma. I should add that there are some holdups right now with some of the seizure dollars that are there, especially on a federal level. It actually began on the prior administration and is now still being mitigated and rectified. And so I don't know if that's going to happen this year or if they'll start to release those dollars next year. But just keeping this fund here going and depending on those kind of things. And so just to let you know that that's kind of in the works. So as far as additions, the line items are relatively the same. I'll draw your attention to 21035, which is the small tools and minor equipment, and that is just surveillance electronic equipment and night vision goggles. And then in 2020, the heavy vests. So the night vision goggles are rather expensive. They're about $12,000 a piece. But what I've learned over the last year is they have a life, and that life begins to wear out over time. And so what we wanted to do, because our Valley team is so heavily involved with beginning to work at night a lot more, it's a lot safer for us to actually do a lot of our operations in the pitch black without using lights. This kind of equipment allows us to operate in the total darkness, which creates a real, it ups our safety in the field. And so we've decided that I think it's important that we have a cycle or a schedule in how we replace these items. A lot of times we don't buy them brand new. We have to buy them certified from the United States government. And here's the problem. When you get an item like that, you never really know how many hours those goggles already have on it. So we just wanted to make sure that we were always in a position in a moment's notice to have that. And then, believe it or not, the heavy vests that SWAT officers wear, these are a highly rated vests. Typically will stop rifle rounds. So it's a needed piece of equipment. They also have an expiration by way of the company in which you purchase them from. And so it's important for us to stay up to date with that schedule. And so that's a one-time purchase in 2020. So,
Councilmember Wales?
Bill, do we collect rape kit materials? And
we do.
And do we send them to the state for processing?
Yeah, we're in the middle of right now making sure that every single one of those has been up and processed. So, and if you know the story behind it, they weren't processed because we didn't have a case, but now we're moving all those forward. So we're purging them out and getting them there and getting in the database.
Okay. Does that cost us anything?
Not that I can see right now.
Okay.
We just need to submit them. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Anything else for Bill? Councilmember Wales?
I have a question for you, Nancy. Mayor, is there something that our lobbyist group can do to help us try to get some faster access to the federal portion of the drug forfeiture money?
We can always ask our consultants to do that, yes.
Okay. Well, you probably have already done that, but yeah, thank you.
Councilmember DeCoursey?
Back in book one, on page 158, under facilities, do you have a timeline of looking at doing a study for space needs and kind of what that would entail? You talked about a potential new public safety building. So I'm just kind of curious as to what kind of time frame you might put on that.
You know, I'll refer to Shelley for that one because it's under another area.
Okay, what we've got, we've talked about at some of our previous budget meetings, we've put some money in the budget to start doing a space study for M&O as well as the police department and for City Hall here. And so what we hope to do is first we're going to need to spec that space study out and be very specific what we're looking for. You know, are we looking just at what the space needs are, our site selection, you know, site selection ideas, things like that. So yes, we are going to be starting that with the adoption of this budget.
Councilmember Wells.
Would that include looking at the needs for courtrooms?
We don't have the courtrooms on that space study, but it could be included.
Okay. I don't know if it's a priority or not, but I do know that there's a shortage of courtrooms.
Councilmember Troutman.
So you're looking for space, but you're saying we don't have any. Are we thinking of building up, or what are we thinking of doing?
Well, first we'd have to assess the building. I don't, you know, there's things like, well, do we move the court somewhere and the police take over that whole building? So the court would have to, I would think, would have to be part of this discussion, and we need to be how we spec this out. Whether you can go up in that building, whether even if the court moved out, is there enough room in that building for our police department? We like to look at at least a 20-year horizon before we go and invest to make sure that this building was completed in 2003 or 4. And it's supposed to be a 20-year building, but we're there at 15 years, 14 years. So we want to make sure. So whether we go up, we want to look at City Hall. You know, should City Hall stay here? We know we can't go up here at City Hall. That's already been determined. And so what do we do? Do we consolidate City Hall, police, and court all in another building somewhere? So these are all things that will be taken into consideration when we go out and look for a consultant to help us with this.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Oh,
Councilmember Troutman.
this is for you, Bill. On your training, how much time do our police officers get on de-escalating a situation?
Well, we do 24 is the state requirement for training for all police officers, and included in that is use of force. So we do what's referred to as use of force scenarios, where we include defensive tactics, lethal force, and de-escalation. So not every scenario runs you into something that's hostile or requires deadly force. A lot of our scenarios are the officer is successful in a scenario when he can employ de-escalation techniques, then it's a successful. So it's not always a shoot scenario. It's a de-escalation scenario. So they know that that's very important as far as part of that
Do
training.
you think that's enough hours for a newbie to come in?
Well, they get tons of it in the academy when they show up. We just, as part of that 24 hours, 8 hours or a little bit more is entitled to just use of force. That's really a big area. So I think in the future we're going to probably try to use some technology to try to get more hours in, but we'll work on that.
Right,
So
thank you.
it is a very important part to our repertoire and how we use force out there.
Anything else? Councilmember Wells.
The cameras.
Okay.
Where are we with cameras?
Well, I know we have that in the IT budget to actually purchase, to outfit the entire department. There's a lot that goes into a body camera. It's not as simple as just spending a bunch of money and taking these things and slapping them on an officer and away we go. It's the back office managing this. So, and one of the things that comes up to mind that we still have never really tackled and we're still working on, I think just as a city in general, and that is the public records requests that come to that. Now, the state legislature has narrowed the focus on who has access to those kind of things. But remember this, if let's say somebody requests a video that was done by an officer's body cam, if that, before that was allowed to go out into the public per that request, if it's an hour long, somebody has to sit down and watch this video for an hour. And then use another technology which we have not invested in, and that is the ability to cut and paste certain areas out. So if we have juveniles in there, those may need to come out. If we're in somebody's residence, we may need to cut some of that out. If somebody's in a compromising position that would totally violate their privacy, that needs to come out. And so there's a lot more to it than just cameras. And so I think right now, in my opinion, I think what we're doing is just kind of watching everyone around us to kind of see how it goes. I would like the legislature to even get a little bit more restrictive on how these videos go. And I'll give you an example. If you all live in a neighborhood and the police show up to your house, Mrs. Kravitz can request your video and find out what happened in your house, perhaps, right? Those are some of the things that we want to eliminate. So it's a lot bigger project than what it is. We do have video cameras in every single car. That does allow us to have video not only out of the police car, but also audio to about 400 feet. So even if an officer is not on the camera, I can listen to conversations going on inside of a home at times when we're chasing after somebody. So I do get some audio in it. So if you have multiple officers showing up to a scene, a lot of times you can just piecemeal all the cameras together and you can still get a pretty good idea of what's out there. So I will add this, that because our motorcycles and our animal control and our parking don't have any doesn't have any cameras inside their vehicles, especially on a motorcycle, we have outfitted them with body cameras. So right now we are kind of piloting it using that group to kind of see how it goes. So now every officer, to include animal control and parking when they're in the field, have some access to some kind of video that is useful. So,
Councilmember DeCoursey.
Parking enforcement.
my favorite.
Yes, we have 2 FTEs.
Yes.
And just as an example, the area that Bob and I live in, we have these habitual violators, I'll say, that ignore the no parking signs or people parking on the street longer than 72 hours, in some cases weeks. And patrols come by every once in a while, but it's, it's kind of a cycle that goes on there. So is that something should we be looking at more to help step up that part of the program a little bit, more FTEs and a little more emphasis on that?
Yeah, I will say this, for abandoned vehicles, we still really heavily rely on that call to 911 because that starts the clock for us to go out and put a sticker and then keep track of that vehicle, and that's how we monitor that. So so we still rely on that 72 hours. We still rely on that quite a bit. It's usually generated from a complaint. So when officers are driving through your neighborhood, let's say, they're not noticing that vehicles have been there, they're not going to do, they might not do that. So some of our officers might not even notice parking infractions because they're probably in your neighborhood because there's another call that they're going to, so a lot of times the majority of our parking enforcement is done via the 911 call, or if it's proactive, it's actually done by the 2 officers. Now they spend some of their day, especially Monday through Friday, downtown chalking timed areas, and so then they have to go back after 3 hours. So they are busy. They write several tickets, and it can get even busier because we're just not enforcement oriented. I always try to get them, if they can solve a problem without a ticket, let's try to do that and educate the public. We're always in that mode. So some of our biggest complaints are parking issues, and so we try to mitigate those without angering the public as much as possible, but getting compliance as well. So it's a balance. It's a balance act. If we had a 3rd parking person, we would just increase the work that you already see. I mean, that's really kind of what would happen. So.
Okay, anything else? Thank you, Bill.
All right.